Hello viewers, and welcome again to Discovering Truth, and I am Pastor Forbes from the Gateway Abiding Word Ministries here in the Gambia. We are now, I believe, in part of our discussion on how as a nation, my country, the Gambia, we can get it right, get it better, and make it consistently so. We will not grow as a nation in steps, missteps, missteps, one step forward, two backward, one forward, because cumulatively our progress would be infinitesimally small. I believe there are methods, there are best practices, there are proven systems and structural organizations and reorganizations in terms of civil service reform, in terms of the enabling environment that will be created for business to thrive, for people to self-actualize, and for people to even love to pay taxes because they see the benefit thereof. And all these constitute a win-win for a nation, and not just for one generation, but for successive generations in leaps and bounds incrementally. And that is how you can notice that nations that have that working for them year by year, even when things are shaking and a bit turbulent, like we've noticed in the last 2 or 3 years, some nations that have it working for them are able to bring contingency thinking, bring contingency planning, fast, quick adaptation, recalibrating themselves, and still moving on. I have from time to time talked about this mechanical contraption in a generator for a car, for electricity. It's something, and I wonder why it's called that. It's called the governor or a governor. It's the kind of contraption that when you pull more power than maybe ordinarily should be pulled, it readjusts itself and you'll hear the sound, almost the kind of sound you hear when an automatic transmission is happening in a car. You go vroom, gong, gong. It's that change, or sometimes what you hear in the thermostat of a refrigerator or a freezer, because some things have been factored into the build, into the structuring, into the invention, that peradventure, in the event that this happens, something must kick into action. It's almost like when you have a backup system, like some of us have. Maybe you have solar systems, and maybe they are hybrid systems, and they are automatically connected to the grid. And when the grid goes off, the system kicks off. Of course, in some systems, there is like a 3 microsecond gap to ensure that things are okay. Sometimes it's actually 3 seconds to stabilize the voltage, and it kicks in. And then when the grid comes on, it trips back like a UPS. And so these systems are not systems that were done today. It's the same mindset that when we build this kind of structure, especially into our thinking, into our worldview, then we are on the pathway to getting things right. I don't think there is any citizen or resident of any country who doesn't desire things to go well. Either way, as a citizen, you desire and you strive for things to work out well, because that's where you are, that's where you live, that's where you were born. And if you were married into it, or by some business investment, or long term of staying there, you become a resident, you want to add value to it. Some nations will give you a card, a green card. They give you residential status, and automatically you pick up the ethos, you pick up the the vision of that country, and you want to add value to it because what you saw that made it good is what attracted you, hopefully, to that place in the first place. And these are things we want to really do to make sure our nation lasts. There is a verse in the Bible, it's in the book of Psalms, and I'll paraphrase it. It says, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem, for in its peace and prosperity, you will also have your peace and your prosperity." So if you desire mayhem, if you desire war, if you desire anarchy, if you desire instability, you are shooting yourself in the foot. You are shortchanging yourself because none of those things constitute an enabling environment for the nation to thrive. And as I've always said, a short man who lives amongst pygmies and dwarfs is not a tall man. A short woman who lives amongst pygmies and dwarfs is not a tall woman. It's just an exaggerated height because everybody around you is much shorter than you are, but you're not tall. In the same way, if everybody is suffering and you probably contribute to the suffering and you think you are enjoying, that's poverty of thinking. It's poverty of a mindset. And in fact, you feel insecure because nobody likes you, nobody wants you, nobody thinks well about you. And after some time, they probably actualize and practicalize their thoughts. And so you live that life where you are looking around your shoulder, you are checking, and as I've said in previous segments, you are trying to use all kinds of methods. And of course, in our part of the world, a lot of heavy-duty fetishism, what we call the Marabu power. You go to the setting and you want something to happen. No. We want to get it right. And we want to get it right for our nation. So I want to discuss a few more things because, as I said, this series very likely will take us into April, probably even into May, because it's born from a heart that really craves to see right being done. Because I do not think right is impossible. Right is not in the skies. Right is not far-fetched, especially when maybe in some ways you've been there before. Ladies and gentlemen, best practice is not a phrase given to the Northern Hemisphere, otherwise known as the West. Best practice is best practice. Punctuality is not an ability given to non-black people, non-pigmentation people. No. Punctuality is punctuality. There's a principle that governs it. If I know I should be at a meeting at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning and I live maybe in Bijilo and I know Monday morning that it's going to be rush hour traffic, a couple of things I can do. I can either sleep in Banjul Sunday night, so it makes it easier for me just by the principle of punctuality, so that I keep the record of best practice that I am always on time. Or maybe I leave at 6:30 in the morning and wake up early, get my lunch, get my tea in a flask, and be driving with the traffic, and surely I will get to Banjul in time for my appointment. But if I want to leave at 8:30 and drive on all sides of the road and maybe put my hazard lights on with tinted glass and want to break the rule, then generally somebody else sees that and does that, and then we go back to where we started from. Which brings me to what I want to talk about today. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there are national practices, there are theories, and permit me to call them hypotheses. There are governance methodologies that have been given to us. Some have worked for some countries, some have not worked. And I remember a few months ago, one of my public speaking segment 3, at the end of the segment, trainee, he spoke on a subject that he was querying a very popular governance methodology and was asking whether it is a one-size-fits-all panacea for national development, continuity, prosperity, governance, peace, and security. And of course, since he was presenting it before our 8 examiners, there was a healthy exchange in the Q&A session, and some disagreed with him, some agreed with him, but the points were there that certain governance systems are not a one-size-fits-all mechanism for every country, because countries are who they are by virtue of their experience, their belief systems, their customs, their cultures, their traditions, sometimes their failures, betrayal systems, educational background, outside influence, inner fears, so many things that make the composite of why this person thinks like that. So you find people who are generally adventurous, active, proactive. They are ready to take calculated risks. And sometimes you find people generationally who want to see everything on the head of this pin before they take action. And if you want to move one to the other and the other to the other, you need to understand what it is that informs their thinking. And so he argued that, and it was a very interesting topic, but for his privacy's sake, I would have put it on social media because it's a very healthy discourse, and I'm sure he'll take it further. Because, ladies and gentlemen, when we look throughout our world, and I think globally, the question is to be asked, is there any nation in this world that we know that consistently 30, 40, 50 years, let's say 60, so we include African countries from independence, Ghana, 57, so let's say 60 years back, are there any countries that we know that by themselves now, socialism, communism, democracy, the monarchical system, dictatorship, and any other form, and the hybrids thereof, have really worked for them? Can we truthfully say, after all the meetings and all the brainstorming sessions, and in Gambia we call them stakeholder meetings, validation meetings, and we have all these things that we do year in, year out, decades. There are meetings and programs and projects that you can literally go into the archives, go into 1980, 1990, maybe even up to 2000, and you can literally show the exact same either project name, concept idea. 23 years later, they're still doing the same thing. And the question is, why is it not working? And any place where things seem to work, there are two qualifiers that I believe, and I can say truly that they are observable, these two qualitative characteristics or indicators that make for this good, togetherness, oneness, and a sense of collective ownership for the common good. One is visionary leadership. Visionary leadership. Not just leadership, but visionary leadership. The ability to cast a vision, articulate it, inspire people towards it, be an example in it yourself, and carry the people with you, and even watch them build a sense of ownership for it and into it as a win-win for everybody. So the first is visionary leadership, and the second is a galvanized followership. And by galvanized, I of course am subsuming the word understanding, collective ownership that I just talked about. Win-win thought. These two, you'll find them. So if a leader espouses for cleanliness, for example, and exemplifies it in every way, shape, and form. For example, let's say the leader, the father, the religious leader, the governmental leader, any kind of leader, political leaders, all kinds of leaders. Let's say development leader is driving in their car and suddenly trash is thrown maybe from the car in front of them. There are three options. Option one is to maybe toot, speed, overtake that car, ask the car to stop, or get to the nearest police checkpoint as we have in our country and tell the policeman, these people throw this out of the car. Maybe at the very least make a fuss about it so that whoever did it feels ashamed and knows that what they did was wrong. Or, number two option, the leader can trafficate, come down, even if they are chauffeur driven. Tell their chauffeur, their driver to park, pick that thing and keep it. And chances are people in the vehicles behind will notice that and will applaud. A few might laugh. You always have those in society. So either you do that, or number three, they close their eyes, snigger at it, and continue. But when you are a visionary leader, things catch your eye. You just don't talk, pontificate, or pout. You do something. And that's why last segment I talked about analysis paralysis. And I said that is when people sit down and talk and talk and talk and analyze, armchair talking, expertise talking that goes nowhere. At the end of it, nobody literally picked that trash from the ground. Analyzed all the angles of the throw, the inclination, the car, how the sun was shining, but nobody gets dirty. So visionary leadership is key. Why? Because we have this phrase in English, do what I say, but not what I do. So if I keep saying, pick the trash, and I throw the trash, or I don't pick the trash, no. I must pick the trash as an example. I can even go a step further by providing trash cans, dustbins. I can even go a step further by explaining and calling a little meeting and putting something on radio, putting an advert, putting a jingle, putting something on video and showing good citizenship. Leadership that is visionary. And once that happens, I believe that a galvanized followership is almost a given. Why? Because the followership will say, if she can do it as our leader, and he is doing it as our leader, and he and she are not do as I say, but not do as I do people, they are walking the talk, talking the talk, and walking the walk, then others will do it. Because sometimes a picture has been built, my leader did that. If my leader saw me, and not from fear, but from the understanding that as we all pick up little, the little trash disappears and an organized, sensible, clean environment eventually ensues. And guess what? It almost becomes second nature, if not first nature. It should have been first nature at the beginning, because part of our training And good grooming and upbringing is that parents will tell their kids, no, go and throw it in the trash can, pick it. And in some nations, of course, you have different color-coded bins, blue, green, recycled colors. And you know where to put plastic, you know where to put paper and all that. But it's leadership. So we all, some were happy, some lamented, some of us felt very ashamed when it appeared that the Japanese football team, after having lost their match or a match that they played, the team stood back, and I believe their supporters, and were picking things and cleaning the stadium. And this is my thing, ladies and gentlemen. It is not necessarily from an autocratic dictatorship, military mindset. It was from visionary leadership. A nation where a minister appeared a few seconds late to work or a few minutes late to work, or the chairman or the managing director of a train station, huge train station, one of the trains was a few seconds late. Not only did they apologize, they went forward and resigned. Not arguing their way out, not blaming anybody else. They understood that, as in the words of leadership guru John Maxwell, everything falls and rises on the leader. Everything falls and rises on leadership. So in that country, they resigned. I believe in one of the Western countries, probably the United Kingdom, a couple of years ago, somebody also did the same thing. A cabinet minister or something was just a few minutes late and felt that that was not going to work for the consistency of the brand that they were trying to bring as a nation. And he tendered his resignation. Doesn't he want money? Yes. Will the media go on him? Yes. Will they hound him? Yes. But the greater good is what I believe made him do that. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to pick up from here next week, because all this that I've talked about, I have distilled it in 2 words. If we want to get it right as a nation, what are these 2 words? Law and order. Law and order. I believe we can have loads and loads of conferences and all kinds of big things and presidents going up and down, national flags, Bentleys, VIP vehicles, convoys, all kinds of things, joint communiques. But if there is no law and order for the leadership and the followership, we really have a long way to go. And so to answer that question that I started by asking, if you know of any nation where they are galvanized with a sense of ownership, with a sense of togetherness, pride for their nation to go, and the nation has a semblance of cleanliness, organization, punctuality, you don't have to bribe for business. If you look deeply, you're probably going to find these 2 qualifiers as their good governance mechanism: law and order. And I want to end by saying, any nation and every nation that has these 2 going for them is on a trajectory of getting it right. And until I come your way next week, by the special grace of God, this is Pastor Forbes saying, think about what we've said. We can do it in our country, especially given the size of our country. Law and order. Further down the path on the line, education will come in. Patriotism will come in. But for now, law and order. Have a good day. And by the way, happy Valentine.